The story begins with a boy named Ming. He was an ordinary boy who attended school and wore glasses. His hobbies were playing games and watching anime, and he enjoyed his life, which was quite good. Ming said that he lived a normal life, and everything was fine for him, and Ming also wasn't very curious. But suddenly, behind one wall, Ming heard strange sounds, explosions. He was sure that the building had been closed off a long time ago, but he decided to climb over and see what was happening. To his surprise, he saw a girl fighting with a guy who seemed to be a thief. The girl had orange hair and was dressed like some sort of superheroine, and the guy was attacking her with a large spear amidst the explosions. The boy with orange hair offered the girl a deal: if she handed him a box, maybe the evil guy would spare her life. However, the girl refused. She said that people have the right to decide how they will live. Suddenly, this unknown guy said that the fairy had no right to decide because it's very hypocritical. But the fairy replied that he himself was a hypocrite because of the things he was saying, which was very offensive to this stranger. He became very angry, so he took out his large spear and decided to kill this fairy. The fight escalated. The enemy was giving more and more hits. Meanwhile, the young boy decided to climb up the wall to get a better view. When Ming climbed up, he was shocked because the battle became even more intense, and this unknown enemy, even though defeated by the fairy, managed to avoid her attacks and dodged all of his strikes. But suddenly, a fragment flew towards the boy, shattering, and a pink crystal flew out of it, hitting the boy. It was really terrifying because suddenly the boy started glowing, and changes began to happen to him. This shocked Ming because he didn't expect it at all. His body started glowing pink, and he found himself surrounded by a pink barrier. The girl said that it had begun and that the crystal had found a suitable hero, and now the boy was encased in a strong cocoon. At that moment, the evil enemy said that they needed to stop this, but the boy didn't know what was happening, so he struck the pink cocoon, but nothing happened. He said that this cocoon was really strong, so he decided that he needed to gather all his strength and deliver a very powerful blow. The boy gathered all his fiery energy, and everything around him was engulfed in flames. His teeth were on fire. He wanted to destroy the cocoon. The boy was becoming stronger and stronger, everything around him was turning pink, and his eyes began to glow pink. Ming found himself in some kind of pink barrier, while the fairy said that it had started and that the crystal had found a suitable hero. The boy began to transform, and the girl said that now he was in a cocoon, which was very strong, and it was almost impossible to destroy it. At that moment, the evil enemy said that this needed to be stopped, but suddenly, the pink crystal said to the fairy girl Ella, "We must stop this." But Ella replied that it was unnecessary since the cocoon might not be from the second generation, it could be from the first generation. Meanwhile, the fiery boy wanted to deliver a very powerful blow as he had accumulated a lot of his strength. The layer ruptured, and inside was Ming. Up until now, this boy, Ella, warned, could be in danger, as it was truly perilous for everyone. After the eyes were ripped from the pink field, an unknown creature emerged. It was no longer the fiery boy, it was a person with pink veins. As it turned out, it was a queen who radiated violet light and seemed like some kind of deity. No one expected that this fairy would be from the first generation. She was the most powerful fairy, the Queen of Thorns, shining with violet light and appearing very mighty. However, despite this, the fiery youth was very aggressive. He wanted to destroy her. This monster ran towards her and continued attacking her. He was filled with hatred, and he just wanted her dead. The man was ablaze, but the queen was also very powerful. No one knew what would happen next as they clashed in the struggle, and when they got closer to each other, it became clear that this Queen of Thorns was starting to overpower the fiery boy. She struck him in the face, and his face began to bleed. He couldn't believe how this was even possible, and he didn't understand how it happened because he had reached his maximum power. He thought that this queen had no chance against him, but the fiery man lost. He said that he would definitely come back and seek revenge on this queen, so after a while, the fiery monster just fled. Suddenly, this fairy began to disappear as well. The boy began to regain consciousness. Ming was becoming very weak as the fairy was leaving him. She had control over his entire body. She left the body of this young boy, and he was completely powerless. Ming didn't know what was happening and what had happened to his body since he had never experienced anything like this before. When the fairy finally left his body, the boy simply fainted, and the young girl said, "Welcome to the world of fairies." The boy's vision was very blurry, and he thought that Ming was dying. All he heard was the girl saying, "Welcome to the world of fairies." It was shocking for him, but as it turned out, the next morning, Du Ming heard his alarm clock. It seemed that the boy had simply been asleep. But when Du Ming woke up, he hit his alarm clock and broke it. Du Ming was also very weak. He didn't understand what was happening to him. Du Ming got up, went to the bathroom, and looked in the mirror. He saw his reflection. Du Ming realized that his nose was bleeding, and he was very weak. Also, the boy couldn't find his glasses. Suddenly, Du Ming started to understand that it was already too late, and he was simply running late for school. Meanwhile, on the TV, there were shocking news. A woman was talking about unknown explosions that were happening in the city all night, and it was very shocking. But the boy didn't care about that. Du Ming just ran to school because he understood that he was late for class. When Du Ming entered the classroom, the teacher was very angry with him. He said that if the boy was late again, he would have to clean the classroom. Thibaut apologized to the teacher, just went to his seat, and sat down at his desk. One boy asked him what had happened to him, why he dared to be late for the class with this teacher. The boy said that Du Ming simply had a very bad night's sleep. Suddenly, an angry bald teacher overheard the boy's conversation, and he hit one of the boys very hard, causing him to lose consciousness. After some time, during the break, both boys were strolling near the Shaoshan Stadium. His friend asked why he was late, and with time, it turned out didn't know what happened, and Du Ming had also forgotten his glasses, which surprised Shaoshan because he realized that Du Ming had run there and left his glasses behind. It was truly amusing. Meanwhile, nearby, the boys were playing football. One boy in a red shirt kicked the ball, and it flew towards the boy without glasses. Shaoshan started laughing loudly, knowing that the ball almost hit Du Ming in the head. But as it turned out, Du Ming easily caught the ball with his left hand, which was quite shocking. His friend asked how he did it, but the boy himself didn't know. It seemed like he had acquired some new skills he wasn't even aware of. He needed to find out what had happened to him that night. After a while, a girl approached them, and she called Shaoshan to come to her. This made Du Ming very angry that his friend was laughing and making fun of him. He thought that his friend was a really bad one. Suddenly, an angry brown dog approached them and started growling at Du Ming. He didn't understand why the dog was so angry at him, and suddenly the angry dog bit his hand, which was very painful. He started waving his hand, and the dog backed off, but there was blood flowing from his hand. He knew he needed a rabies shot since the dog could be infected. However, after 5 seconds, everything disappeared. His hand was as good as new, which surprised the main character because he couldn't understand how it happened. During the class, Du Ming thought about what might have happened to him that night. He was very curious because now he was a completely different person. Suddenly, the teacher said that a new student would join them today, and the whole class became very quiet, curious about who it would be. As it turned out, it was a new female student, a quite beautiful girl who resembled a fairy. Shaoshan said that he was now interested in life because this girl was very attractive. The boy realized that he had already seen this girl. He saw her fighting with a fiery monster that night, and it was the same fairy. He was truly shocked because he didn't expect that. The girl introduced herself as Ella, and her father was French. She began to talk about her biography. The boys began to talk about what an extraordinary girl she was, as she was truly very beautiful. It was clear that many of them had fallen in love with her. At that moment, the girl noticed the same guy sitting at the back desks. Suddenly, the teacher shouted loudly for everyone to stop, as it wasn't a kindergarten. The teacher also seemed to be impressed by the girl's appearance and asked her to sit in the front row. However, she asked the teacher if she could sit next to Du Ming. Du Ming started to get nervous as he didn't know what would happen next. He asked why she wanted to sit next to him, and she said that they were family, which surprised him greatly because he didn't expect to hear that. Meanwhile, other classmates started to talk about how Du Ming had a really beautiful cousin, and he was very lucky. The teacher allowed her to sit next to Du Ming, and she thanked the teacher and went towards Du Ming. At that moment, Du Ming started to recall something. He had seen her before. She asked if his memory had returned, but he said he understood what she was talking about. She sat behind him, staring at him intently. The girl continued to talk to her crystal, and the crystal said that perhaps Du Ming didn't remember anything because only one night had passed since the incident. The girl said it would take 3 to 5 days to restore his memory. After 30 minutes, the class ended. A boy from the class approached Ella and asked if he could add her on social media to start talking with her. However, another girl with black hair started to push her boyfriend away. The boy complimented Ella's beautiful skin and asked her what she used for it. Domin's friend said that Ella's cousin was really popular. 2 hours later, Domin sat on a bench, watching the boys play basketball. His friend approached him and asked why he was sitting there and not going to the gym. Domin said everything was fine and he was okay, although he thought it was like a story from a comic. Suddenly, they saw Ella. She was dressed in a sporty outfit and looked really attractive because she was indeed very beautiful, and all the boys were in love with her. 2 boys decided to go to her. 10 minutes later, the physical education lesson began. The teacher said that today, he would test the physical skills of all the students and asked them to split into 2 groups, boys and girls. Suddenly, Ella mistakenly joined the boys' group. However, she said it was okay and not to worry about it. The running competition began, and Ella ran incredibly fast. She was the fastest. Afterward, they played games, and Ella showed remarkable skills. Domin was worried because he understood why she came to his class, and he wasn't sure if the story about her being his cousin was true. After the class, Ella sat next to him and greeted him. She sat not far from him and opened her crystal. From the crystal emerged a blue butterfly, and a tiny enchanted fairy was inside. When the fairy woke up, she came to life. This surprised Domin as he didn't expect it. Ella said it was her fairy named Silver. They exchanged greetings. The fairy said that fairies were searching for other civilizations, and they came to this world on a mission. Ella said that Domin was an extraordinary person and now part of them. The fairy warned that the power inside Domin was in danger, and he should be concerned about it. She asked him if he remembered what happened last night. She said this conflict could lead to a bloody battle, even to his death. Ella understood that it was difficult for the young man to accept this reality, as it was truly unusual since no one had seen fairies before. But the fairy said she would help. After hearing these words, the young man felt very bad. He said that he no longer wanted to listen to her story and that if he hadn't been there that night, none of this would have happened. He understood that he had been attacked for no reason. Now, there was a new student in his class, and everything was really strange. He didn't understand why all this was happening to him. Suddenly, Ella told the boy to calm down and take control. The young man regained his composure, and silence fell between them. No one wanted to start a conversation. Ella said that the boy had to accept this fact anyway, as he would always be in danger. The fiery monster would return to seek revenge. "Take the fairy out of me," Ming asked. But Ella began to worry. She realized that something was wrong. He did not know what to do since there were no options. Suddenly, the fairy said that there was one way. She said there was a way to separate him from his fairy. "Dumingesqued, what way?" "You have to kill yourself," said the blue fairy. When a fairy dies, its body disappears, but the soul continues to exist. Ming did not understand what the fairy was talking about. He was really scared. Strange images began to appear where Ming lay dead. Ming did not understand what was happening since he really felt it. Ella said that she would like to show him the headquarters first, but a difficult situation arose. Ella said she would watch over the boy to make sure everything was fine. "Everything, as long as the one in his body was stronger than the one in hers," said the blue fairy. In Ming's body, there was the fairy of the Queen of Thorns, and she was one of the most powerful fairies in the world. If he could use her, then she would have no problems because she was strong, said the blue fairy. She asked how he communicated with that fairy, but Ming was in shock, understood that he had not communicated with her at all. Probably the boy used his energy, and the fairy simply slept in his body, Ella suggested. She asked Ming to remove his clothes, but Ming did not understand what it was about. He decided to do everything Ella said. He took off his pants, but at that moment, the fairy said that he didn't need to take off his pants. He put his pants back on and took off his t-shirt. Ella said that she would now transfer her energy to the boy. The boy asked how painful it would be. Ella said it would be painful, but just a little. She touched the boy, and a lightning-fast energy began to flow through him. It surprised the boy. It was really painful, like an electric shock. It was very painful. A strange violet energy began to flow around, and violet lightning. The boy started screaming because it was really a huge pain for him. He did not expect that it was even possible. Suddenly, pink crystals began to appear on his hands. His hand began to transform into something even stronger. His whole body began to hurt, and his eyes began to change their color. Crystals appeared in his eyes. Suddenly, the boy started falling. He fell down, as if in space. Hadn't expect it to be possible, and he didn't know if he would survive. Because he was just falling down in some space. Suddenly, Ming saw something. He stood in the field and looked ahead. He saw a big pink rose in front of him. Suddenly, this rose began to bloom its petals, and someone began to come out of it. It was strange to the boy because he didn't understand who it was. Suddenly, he realized that he was in some kind of bubble. It was a pink bubble. He saw that there was a girl with crystals on her head standing in front of him. She reached out her tender finger to him. She wanted to touch him, and Ming wanted to touch her finger. He was really much smaller than her. He touched her finger, and suddenly he woke up. As it turned out, he wasn't just lying lifeless on the floor, some unknown magical sphere emerged from him. It began to rise, and Ella said that the queen was coming. Everyone was amazed, no one knew what would happen next. Suddenly, the queen appeared on the scene. She was wearing a violet dress. Both girls were in shock. They greeted the queen and said it was a pleasure to meet her. The queen asked why nothing was known about the blue fairy. The fairy replied that she was created at the end of the war but did not take part in it. Fortunately, you didn't take part in that terrible war, said the queen. She asked how long her generation has lived in this world. The blue girl started counting on her fingers and said it was approximately 600,500 years. This surprised the queen because she said it was a quite long time. She looked at the boy. He wanted to say something, but she interrupted him, saying her name was Vitaka Sinway. She apologized to him for the situation, explaining that she had to enter his body as soon as she saw it. However, Ming said everything was okay, and there was no need to apologize. The pink girl asked the other girls what else they knew about her. The blue fairy said that the first-generation fairies had the power of space and some kind of army. This surprised the pink queen. Ash thought they should know more. Ella said that at least her organization knew about it. The Queen of Thorns said that Ming would not use her power to avoid giving him away. You can die, said the pink queen. This deeply affected the boy, as he did not want to die. The Queen of Thorns said that their connection level was currently very weak, putting them in danger. She explained that even if he wouldn't unite with anyone, the power could not be evaluated. This surprised the pink fairy. She said that after the first generation of fairies, the second generation fairies were born through analysis and information, and now, thanks to the Queen of Thorns, they could find something and revive. But Ella said sadly that they only have one type of queen at the moment. At this moment, someone wanted to ask the queen something. She asked, Your Majesty, may I ask what is the level of connection between you and Ming? The Queen of Thorns replied, only 16%. This amazed everyone, as no one expected such a result. Ming didn't understand anything at all. Meanwhile, the queen said that she currently lacks the energy to stay here. She would need to restore her energy, so she created a portal and disappeared into the boy's chest. Ella started to think about what to do because 16% seemed quite low. The blue fairy told him that the energy level would definitely increase, but unfortunately, it increases quite slowly. Ella gave him his jacket and told him to rest because tomorrow they would start training. She asked if he had a free room at home, which surprised him, as he didn't think Ella would stay at his place. Ella said that if she didn't live with him, there was no point in protecting him. The boy understood, and the night fell, and all the heroes fell asleep. The next day, they started training. The boy was really tired from the run and couldn't run anymore. He stopped, and Ming said he had only slept for 3 hours and couldn't run much. Ella understood him and said that the endurance training was over, and now they would move on to another place. They entered a huge giant warehouse, where there were only 2 of them. Ella asked the fairies how fast the regeneration could be. The Queen of Thorns said that it only took 6 hours to fully recover. This surprised the boy. And suddenly, she put on her magical costume and turned into the same superheroine. This surprised the boy. Now she told him to activate his combat mode too, but he didn't understand how. He didn't know how to do it at all. The blue fairy said he needed to connect with his mind and repeat everything he did on the first day. But as it turned out, he didn't fully understand what he died in the first day because he did it accidentally. Also, he needed to choose a weapon, and it didn't matter whether it was one weapon or several. The boy decided to try. He combined everything together with his mind and immersed himself in a world where there was a lot of different weaponry. He took a sword and a shield. After a few minutes, Ella got her weapon and said they were starting. She hit the boy's hand hard, then took his hand and said she would make him stronger. The beautiful girl said she would use several methods to teach him. She took her sword again and ran towards the boy. She swung and hit his hand hard again. Du-min couldn't withstand this blow. He flew to the wall and hit it. It was very painful because he was just an ordinary human. Ella told him not to forget to pay attention to his thoughts about it. She said he should get up, but he said his hand hurt badly, and he couldn't stand because obviously, his hand was broken. But suddenly, after 2 minutes, his hand became healthy. This surprised the boy. He didn't expect that. Ella said he should get up and continue fighting because he needed more training. At the end of the day, the boy just lay beaten on the ground. He couldn't do anything at all. He felt terrible. Ella extended her hand to him and said that today's training was over. She took some pouch and started healing his wounds. Du-min asked if he would be okay. He said he had no strength, and he felt really pathetic. The girl squeezed his hand because she wanted him to calm down. She said she would definitely make him stronger. He just needed to believe in her. The young man decided to do so when they were all at home. The girl was talking to her blue fairy. She said she didn't expect that the connection level would be very low, and Johnson, their worst enemy, was much stronger than them. Ella was thinking about whether the boy could last more than 2 minutes in battle. She decided she needed to train him more to make him stronger. Meanwhile, the boy was talking to his pink fairy. She said his situation was quite bad because he couldn't use his abilities, and that was really bad. Currently, he could only last for 30 seconds, which was very little. The boy asked if she couldn't fight Johnson since last time she fought him, she won. The last time she had to take control of everything, said the Queen of Thorns. She used the energy of the former host. This surprised the boy. She took a magical pink cloak from her hand and handed it to the boy. She said that if he didn't use it, it would disappear. It surprised the boy, and Du-min didn't know what to do. What's the use of training if it's just very painful and brings nothing? Yes, he was in despair, head hot. But suddenly, the Queen of Thorns said there was one way to defeat Johnson and increase the level of connection. This surprised the boy, and he started her story. On the next day, Alla continued to taunt the boy. She exerted her maximum strength, creating various spherical balls and shooting them at him. The blue fairy warned that it was too much, as Theboe would simply die. However, despite this, the boy kept urging her to continue. He would stand up even though it was very painful for him, as he was severely injured. He insisted that she should carry on, and they both resumed their fight. This surprised the blue fairy. She couldn't understand why the boy became so persistent and why he wanted to risk his life. The Queen of Thorns said that she promised to elevate the level of their connection if he started training even harder. Nevertheless, the blue fairy doubted it would be possible. As it turned out, the Queen of Thorns had deceived the naive boy. She said she needed time or to restore her energy, and moreover, if the boy trained harder, he would become even stronger. She asked the second-generation fairy to use her maximum power against the boy and fight him as if he were Johnson. This astonished everyone. It turned out that the frog fairy had said that the boy needed to defeat Ella first, then he could defeat Johnson. The boy faced Du-Ming. It was really challenging for him to fight. He endured immense pain as his bones kept breaking. Nevertheless, he didn't give up. The Queen of Thorns said that the boy needed to penetrate this pain to be able to defeat stronger enemies. The next day, Du-Ming went to school and met his friend. The friend asked why he didn't come toplay as they agreed. But Ella approached them and said she was worried about her cousin and promised to take care of him. The boy understood and wished them good luck. They continued training the next day. Although the boy's wrist was injured, they persisted. It was excruciating as his bones kept breaking, but after 4 weeks, he became quite accustomed to what the Pink Queen had promised. She said it was crucial for him not to lose consciousness, as otherwise, everything they said would be erased. She also said his soul would be separated from his body for a while, and he needed to understand it. When they started, a pink layer appeared in Theboe's eyes, and blue-pink lightning ran to his brain. It was excruciating, and the boy suffered from the pain. His entire body was in shock, and a pink atmosphere appeared around him. He said he had never felt such pain, even during training. Meanwhile, they heard someone shouting, "Naomi, Naomi, help!" It turned out to be a blonde boy laying on the floor, and a pink girl was standing over him. She said her name was Naomi and asked the girl not to let this boy die. Meanwhile, unknown monsters were appearing, falling from the sky to the ground. The girl remembered a council where they were deciding who was responsible for all the problems. Meanwhile, they moved forward and attacked the council. They recalled that Naomi would destroy this capital, and it would be very bad. Meanwhile, Naomi was destroying all the monsters. She took out her big orange sword and started fighting black monsters with red eyes. Everyone was screaming that the end of the world had come, but Naomi said there was no need to shout about it. She fought with all her might, activating her pink energy and fighting the monsters jumping at her. She swung her sword fiercely, trying to defeat them all. It was evident that she was really enraged and never lost hope. At that moment, a red lightning bolt appeared in the sky, and it was a dragon, with wings and a long tail. It was flying near Naomi, and it was indeed gigantic, with a body made of lava. The gigantic monster opened its paw and took this beautiful pink girl. It took her and flew away in another direction. The girl asked Crystal what would happen if she died, and Crystal said he wouldn't let it happen. Suddenly, at that moment, they exploded. Everything around them exploded, and the gigantic lava monster also exploded. The girl landed on the ground, and there was just water around her. Everything was very blue, and nobody knew what it was. The girl walked forward and saw the same boy there. Suddenly, he woke up. He didn't understand that he was bleeding from his nose and eyes. It was truly unexpected. Suddenly, the Pink Queen said that unfortunately, the boy lost consciousness in less than 2 minutes, and it was bad. Ming started to worry, thinking that it was really not enough to win. He began to think they had lost. But suddenly, the Pink Queen said that fortunately, things were not as bad as they expected. As it turned out, there was another power inside the boy. At that moment, Theboe asked if they had won and if everything worked out. The Pink Queen hissed and said that yes, fortunately, everything worked out. It lifted the spirits of the young boy. He thought it was all over, and it truly was. The next day, the boy was simply running as usual. There was a fight, but now he was in a good mood. After some time, Ella and he didn't stop together. Ella asked the boy how he was feeling. Ming said he felt good after all the training. It meant he had become much stronger. This made Ella very happy. She said there was also good news for him. However, in the meantime, a dark crow with red eyes was watching the two of them. Ella continued to talk about her application, which had been fortunately approved. But in the meantime, the angry crow approached Ella unexpectedly. Nobody knew what would happen next. The furious crow grabbed Ella. Suddenly, Ming heard strange sounds, which were coming from a large red sword. He looked ahead and saw the silhouette of an unknown person. The Pink Queen hissed, saying it was him. It was indeed him, Johnson. The boy was already scared. He pressed against the wall and didn't know what to do because he was terrified. He understood that he would be hunted by Johnson. Johnson noticed that the boy was scared. He said that the boy needed to be scared because he would die soon too. The Pink Queen hissed again, saying the boy needed to calm down because he had trained, and now he had become stronger. He had more power. Ming decided to listen to the Pink Queen's advice. He did everything she said. He calmed down and started believing in himself. He didn't need to give up. He asked Johnson what he had done to Ella and where she was now. Johnson took a weapon in his hands, ran towards the boy, and wanted to hit him. He said that soon Ming would end up in the same place where Ella was. Meanwhile, the angry crow threw Ella to the ground. Ella fell and didn't understand where she was and what she had forgotten. What am I supposed to do here? It was a large, gigantic prison that resembled a giant crow. Meanwhile, blue chains took hold of Ella's hands and legs. They began to hold her tightly and immobilize her. Ella was scared. She didn't understand what was happening. Meanwhile, a certain doctor approached her. Ella recognized this man. She said she never thought it could be him. He began to approach her closer and closer. Meanwhile, the boy fought against Johnson. He was really scared. And Johnson was really strong. The boy hardly felt his hands. He was truly scared. But luckily, he managed to fend off the attack of this Johnson. He struck him with his shield, and they continued to fight. Johnson began hitting him with his big red spear. Johnson was really ready to destroy him. He was very angry at him. But fortunately, the boy managed to block all his attacks. As it turned out, Johnson said he didn't expect this, that this ordinary boy could be so strong, and it seemed to him that he should have been more relaxed. He also realized that he was much stronger than he thought because the training had benefited him greatly. Now, he had real chances to defeat this Johnson. He took his shield in hand, and one of his hands started glowing pink. These were some unknown crystals. Johnson was really scared because now he understood that he had underestimated his enemy and realized that the boy had managed to recover, even though their last battle was not long ago, and Johnson wasn't fully prepared to fight this guy. He thought the boy would be much weaker. But despite this, Johnson took his big red spear in hand and continued to fight. He struck the boy with all his might, but luckily, the boy managed to dodge his attacks. However, one of Johnson's attacks grazed Du Ming, and it was very painful because the red spear cut off the boy's hand, and he couldn't understand what had happened. He started screaming loudly. It was really painful. The boy lost his hand and his shield. He fell to the ground, screaming loudly. Johnson said he was doing this not because he wanted to kill the boy but because of the fairy inside him. He said it was necessary to do it to save his daughter. As it turned out, the doctor said that to save Johnson's daughter, they needed a lot of money and expensive medicine. They had to do everything possible to save her. Meanwhile, the Queen of Thorns asked the boy to calm down because if he didn't, everything would be terrible, and his mind would just explode, and then he would just burst. But despite this, the boy continued to scream loudly. He couldn't calm down at all because it was really terrible pain. Ella said that unfortunately, his mind was disturbed, and she was very sorry that it happened. Meanwhile, Ella was in some prison. She recognized this man, the doctor, in an unusual mask. The doctor in the black mask said that he was doing this not for his own motives but because he would be paid for it. And he asked her not to be offended by him. He decided to lock her in his own big prison. He said that Ella needed to stay here for a while until he figured something out. He locked Ella in his big prison. Meanwhile, the boy began to explode. It was really unexpected. A large pink aura appeared around him, and there was a lot of pink energy around. It was a terrifying sight. Johnson turned into a gigantic monster. Instead of his veins, pink electricity could be seen. He transformed into a very powerful entity. Johnson thought it was the end because now he would definitely lose if it was really like that. The Queen of Thorns was also surprised. She didn't understand how it happened. As it turned out, Naomi came up from behind. She touched her and said that she had to do it to save her and everyone else. The Queen of Thorns couldn't believe it. She thought it was impossible. And it was some kind of mistake. But Naomi said that she simply broke the prison thanks to her air power. It was a really strong power. The doctor said that now he wouldn't be paid for her escape. But Ella didn't care about it. She was concerned about how Du Ming felt. She believed that it was really the most important thing. She decided to fly towards him. She flew and thought that he would hold on. She firmly believed that he would manage to defeat this Johnson. When she landed on the ground, she confronted him and saw something shocking. Du Ming, with his crystal hand, struck Johnson. He struck him right in the chest, and he started bleeding. As it turned out, it was the final blow for Johnson because these crystals were really very strong, and Johnson had no chance against them all. After some time, Du Ming came to his senses and realized that he had killed a person. He felt really bad because it was his first victim, and he had never thought that something could be so bad. He felt truly terrible as it was his first killing. Meanwhile, an angry raven flew to them and sat beside them, observing everything. It was really interesting for him to see how it was even possible, as he believed that Du Ming should have died. On the second day, Du Ming woke up in his bed and took his player, where there was a recording from Ellie. She said that if he was listening to this, she had already left for an urgent kingdom meeting. She shared some good news, saying that they had managed to defeat Johnson. She also mentioned that the guy needed to take a break and rest from everything that had happened. Instead of him, another guy, another defender, would come to protect him. She said he would understand who this person was when he saw him and should not tell him that he was the owner of the Queen of Thorns, as it was dangerous information for everyone. She also informed the school that he needed a few days of rest, so now he just had to stay at home and relax since he had come through a tough battle. She wished him luck and ended the conversation. Meanwhile, the guy decided to cook some noodles. He took a saucepan and put the noodles in it. After some time, the noodles were ready, and he put them on a plate and started eating. However, it turned out to be too spicy for him. Suddenly, the Queen of Thorns started talking to him, saying that she had to use her other personality yesterday, which caused a reboot that caused a lot of damage to her. Despite this, everything was okay, and their interaction had grown to 20%. Now, thanks to this, the guy could use her new abilities and actions. She also said that Du Ming's shoulder had recovered yesterday, and he could use it without any threat. Furthermore, if he was weak, he could use his innate power, and now, if he wanted, he could make this second power his main one to fight other monsters. He understood the importance of being very careful with this second power and to respect it because it saved his life. He also said that he would just rest and play some games. He went upstairs to his room, turned on the computer, and started playing a game where he met some other friends. One girl asked him why he wasn't at school, wondering if he was sick. He said it didn't matter, the main thing was that he could just play the game. The girl said that she found an interesting bug in the game and wanted to show it to him. The guy gladly agreed, and his friends came to visit him, bringing drinks and various magnetic products, which surprised him because he thought his friends wouldn't visit him. He assured them that everything was fine, he just caught a slight cold, and needed to take a pill. Suddenly, one of the guys asked where his cousin Ella was, as she was supposed to look after him. But Ming said that she had left because there were some family problems, and she would return in a few days. This saddened the guy because, as it turned out, he was in love with Ella. Some time later, he went to the second floor to the guy's room and asked why he was playing games, given that he was still sick and should just stay home and play games. Ming said that Noon allowed him to use the computer. The guy asked him to remove his leg from the table. The guy asked Ming if he communicated with those girls and whether he liked them. He said that he didn't know anything about her, they were just passing the quest together. He didn't even know if it was a guy or a girl because the person didn't turn on the microphone and didn't want to show their voice. Meanwhile, the other friends came to the computer and started looking at what he was doing. One of the guys asked if he was flirting with those girls and whether he liked them. He said that he knows nothing about her, he is just participating in the quest with them. Ming just smiled skyldig. Other people found it amusing because they understood that Ming was probably in love with one of the girls from this online game. After a while, the boy said they should meet at the square tomorrow. Ming said it's okay, and he will definitely come tomorrow. After bidding farewell to his friends, who wished him good health, they left his house. When the guests left, he started the game and continued playing. The girl led Ming to a hill and showed it to him. He thanked her for showing him this beautiful place. After that, the girl said goodbye to Ming and left the game. In reality, the girl said she adores this boy. Later, he saw a video of Ming killing Johnson. The girl was surprised because she thought Johnson was really strong, and she couldn't imagine him losing. She also watched other videos without knowing it was Ming. After 15 minutes, the girl started dancing with some elegant boy. They danced passionately, and Theboe held her shoulders. It was really romantic, and they danced for about 30 minutes. After the dance, the boy said they had a new goal. The girl was really scared about what he meant. In the next scene, an unknown person sat on their knees and took out a water bottle. It was a boy who said he would avenge his brother. He was really angry. At that moment, Ming decided to leave the apartment, though he had many missed calls on his phone. Nevertheless, he left and saw that it was spring outside, birds were singing, and the sun was shining. He walked ahead without looking back. Suddenly, he noticed that he was being watched. The more he looked around, the more he felt like he was being chased by enemies. After a while, 3 people stood near him, saying they had been following him for a long time. They were 3 boys, one of them dark-skinned, and they looked serious, ready for a fight. The boy activated his special ability, and crystals appeared on his hand. The girl in the dress said that after he defeated Yuhan, he broke her heart. Suddenly, a girl in a pink dress with blue eyes appeared from above. Her arrival was accompanied by explosions around. She landed on the ground, showing exceptional strength. Everyone was shocked, not understanding what was happening. The girl asked him if he was Ming. She took off her mask and started talking more clearly, but the boy still didn't understand what was going on and what she wanted from him. She suggested they talk somewhere in a restaurant, where they could talk more. After a while, they were sitting in a restaurant. It turned out that she was Ellie's sister, and she drank a lot of cocktails. During the conversation in the restaurant, Ming learned that the girl in the protective suit was Johnson's sister, whom he hated. She told him about her plans for revenge for her brother. She was drinking but looked like an ordinary girl. Ming was shocked by everything that was happening. Because he didn't understand why she looked so similar to Elu and why she was drinking so much on the tiles, 3 guys who wanted to attack Ming didn't understand what that girl wanted and who she was. The guys decided to consult and think since, as it turned out, she was indeed a very strong girl, and she didn't want to give up. So, they decided not to simply turn around and run. They said they would definitely come back. But despite this, the girl was quite different from them. They had many different character traits. Ming found it difficult, as so many events had happened in the last few days, and he couldn't understand everything. Meanwhile, the girl called the host and asked for another bottle on the tiles for Du Ming. There was a bad feeling about it. He felt that something bad would happen soon. Suddenly, her sister called her. She was worried because her sister rarely called her. She picked up the phone and said that she found Du Ming and that he was okay. Other passersby didn't understand what was being said because the girl was quite young, and she talked about how she took care of Du Ming. This was really strange since she sat on a stool to look tall, and it looked very funny while talking on the phone. Du Ming was very surprised. Suddenly, she asked the guy what happened to his phone and why he wasn't answering calls. He said his phone broke, and that's why he couldn't answer. The girl said, "Yes, Ellie," and conveyed all the information about this guy to her. The guy said not to worry because everything was fine with him, and he just needed to go. But suddenly, Ale's sister stopped the guy by his shirt. She said he couldn't go without her permission. She asked where he wanted to go. He said he wanted to go to the toilet, but Ale's sister said he needed to wait, and she brought something, another cup of tea with milk. Ale's sister thanked her for such kindness. Meanwhile, Du Ming sat and waited as Ale's sister was searching for something on her phone. She searched for a long time, and at one moment, she showed him the phone and told him to look closely at it. She said he became famous because photos and videos from the fight against Johnson spread all over the internet, and everyone was talking only about that. This was really shocking for the guy because he didn't know that someone was filming him. He also didn't know that he had become very popular now. But Ale's sister said that it was also strange because he managed to defeat one of the strongest enemies after just a few training sessions. She said he was from the third generation. This surprised Du Ming a lot, he didn't expect that. The girl with blue eyes said that Johnson was one of the strongest enemies of the fairies from the third generation, and he was called the strongest because his powers were truly mighty. Du Ming decided to look at his phone again as something seemed strange to him. Meanwhile, the queen continued to speak, saying that some people had seen them, and now, for their safety and the safety of their host, they needed to use their power carefully. The girl said that Ella had told her that a guy could achieve 50% interaction with his queen's thorns, but she said she was weak in it. After all, it was quite a high percentage. She suggested that maybe they needed to practice together, and then everything would work out for them. However, Du Ming did not like this idea because he had trained very hard, and in the last few days, he had received many injuries. He uttered some harsh words and suggested they just have another cup of milk tea. Despite all these proposals, Ella's sister elegantly decided to take the guy by the hand and lead him. She pulled him along, regardless of his cries. He had different plans for today. She looked back and decided to take a closer look. She said he didn't need to resist because today he would definitely train together with her. She said it would be a really good workout, but Du Ming didn't like this idea. In the meantime, someone approached from behind. He called the guy's name. He was on a motorcycle. It was his classmates and his best friend, riding motorcycles together. Du Ming was very surprised to see them there because he didn't expect to meet them here so soon. He asked them to save him. He said he didn't expect to be in such trouble so quickly, as they had agreed to meet at the same square yesterday. The girl with red hair asked who the little girl was with him. She was really curious and wanted to know who this was. Du Ming said they were ordinary people who knew nothing about fairies, and soon Ella's sister believed him because she understood that they were ordinary people and posed no threat. She introduced herself and said she was Ella's sister named Izzy. She was really small. She said she came here in the morning to visit Du Ming. Du Ming's friend couldn't believe it was really Ella's sister. He decided to take a closer look and realized she really looked like Ella because they had the same hair and eye color. He pinched her cheek, and she seemed to like it. She bit his finger, but it didn't hurt him. Meanwhile, the girl with pink hair was laughing because it was really cute. She looked like a little child. She asked if she wanted something sweet, and she would pay for it. Izzy said she wanted tea with milk, but suddenly someone started screaming for help, help. They saw a thief stealing a bag from a girl. He was running and shouting for everyone to get out of the way, but suddenly, Du Ming decided to catch him. He grabbed him by his shirt, and the thief turned around and pulled out a knife. He wanted to take revenge on the guy for stopping him, but Du Ming was really good. He hit the guy on the hand, and his knife flew to the side, stopping the thief. He fell to the ground and said to forgive him, as he didn't want to do it. He returned the bag and apologized once again. Meanwhile, Du Ming's friend was shocked, as he didn't expect that his friend could fight so well. Du Ming said he did it reflexively, it was just a habit. The woman who ran up to Du Ming was very grateful to him for returning her bag. She also thanked him for stopping the thief. She was quite lovely. After a while, Izzy and Du Ming returned to Dubin's apartment. When Izzy entered the house, she said she really didn't expect anything to happen there. Dubin said he didn't keep anything forbidden here, and everything was fine. When Izzy's sister saw the big sofa, she quickly jumped on it and lay down. Dubin was very surprised because he understood that Izzy was always amused and she looked like a little girl. Also, a cute girl told how the guy returned the stranger's bag, but they spent the whole day with her. She looked at her phone and saw a lot of selfies with this stranger. And the girl felt very pleased. The guy was really tired because he couldn't sleep properly for the last few days, and he had a lot of adventures. He opened his phone and decided to check something. He looked at what came to the folder, deception. Izzy decided to look at it. She quickly ran to the guy and peeked at his phone. She took his phone and started reading what was written there. She started laughing out loud because it was a message from some younger brother. It was really funny because he didn't have any younger brothers. The guy was really angry. He shouted for the little girl to give him back his phone because it was really impolite, and no one had the right to do that. Izzy was upset because she didn't like it when someone shouted at her. It was really an unpleasant feeling. She said she was only 16 years old, and she was much smaller than him. She also put her feet on the table, which surprised the guy because he couldn't believe that she was already a fairy from her childhood, and she was very glad of it. The guy listened carefully to the story of this girl. Izzy said she had spent all her life studying and training and completing various missions, and that's why she couldn't live like a normal person. So now she can feel like a normal person and just relax and become an ordinary girl. The guy decided to offer something. He suggested the girl play a console game, but she didn't know what it was. She looked at the guy with her big eyes, and 5 minutes later, two people were playing a video game. They were trying to defeat a monster. Izzy was really shocked. She couldn't believe what it was and if it was even possible. However, she played really poorly and died in the game. When she lost, she became very angry. She started shouting, and her eyes turned red. It was very unpleasant for her. She didn't understand why people created such games. She said it was all due to Du Ming, but Du Ming said he was not to blame because the girl agreed to jump on his back herself, which surprised him as he didn't expect it. After jumping on him, they both fell. Night fell, and the boy still wanted to steal the wallet from the guy in a wheelchair who had a broken arm and a cut lip. Behind him, there was a woman pushing him and telling him not to worry, that it would all work out next time. It turned out to be the same stranger who treated all the young people. She just wanted to test this guy if he really possessed some power, and she successfully did that. The next day was really nice, as the sun was shining brightly. They both got up, and Izzy asked why it smelled so bad there. Ella then started commanding herself to put on a big jacket and began to say something. She pointed her finger and suddenly created a portal. From this portal came a little pink girl. It turned out to be a fairy named Sylph. She was an ordinary fairy, and the guy said that his Sylph looked a lot like Ella's fairy. They looked almost identical. Now it was Du Ming's turn. He decided to do everything as Izzy suggested. He called his fairy, and she came out of his chest. She was the Queen of Thorns, dressed in a pink dress. This surprised both girls because they had never seen such fairies before. It seemed really strange to them. The Queen of Thorns and Sylph stared into each other's eyes. Sylph was trying to understand who this fairy was because she had never seen her before. She walked around the fairy and examined her. It was very interesting to know who she was. She said that she was the Queen of Thorns. Sylph realized who she was. She recognized her. She said that this Queen of Thorns was fake. Meanwhile, Du Ming said thankfully it happened this way because he believed that they were discovered. Despite this, the little pink fairy continued to inspect the Queen of Thorns, and it seemed that she was indeed fake. However, Izzy said that they needed to start since they shouldn't waste time. But the boy was in shock because he agreed with Izzy that they would just come here and look at this fairy. It turned out to be deception, and they came here to train. He said he didn't want to fight with her because she was Ella's sister. But despite this, the girl fought with the boy. She jumped high in the air and tried to kick him. She hit the boy, but luckily he managed to see the attack and put his hand in front of it. They started fighting, but the boy didn't want to fight seriously. He flew back and defended himself from all the attacks because he didn't really want to hit her. However, suddenly Du Ming took out his pink weapon. His hands were glowing with pink paint, and he took out his sword. He asked to start a real battle, and they would succeed. The next state begins in a completely different place. It looked like some other planet. There was a big iron reactor. One man with pink hair asked if anyone else had any information. At this point, Ella said that she had no more information and that they were done here now. So the man said that it was necessary for her to go back and watch for Du Ming and her little sister. The girl decided to obey what the man said. She turned around and walked in the other direction. Meanwhile, the man hit the wall hard and was really angry. He said that it was getting worse and worse every time, because it was his daughter, and she didn't even call him father anymore. It was really very painful for him. He felt like he was losing her. Meanwhile, on the ground, the boy was fighting against the AC. He had his big pink sword. The girl wanted to kick him once, but as it turned out, the guy was much stronger and faster than her. So just turned around and disappeared. It surprised her a lot. But as it turned out, Du Ming was behind her. He struck with his big sword. But the girl also realized what was going to happen and tried to defend herself. They continued to fight, and big explosions could be heard around them, and buildings were collapsing. It was a really exciting battle. The pink fairy said that this guy was not bad, and he was a really good opponent for the mistress. She asked the Thorn Queen if she was also created at the end of the war. But the Thorn Queen did not say anything. She looked proudly at her new friend, because she was telling some false information. Meanwhile, the pink fairy said that all the fairies were trying to persuade the queen to become like her. But judging by what she came out with, the Thorn Queen was created in the capital of learning. She asked the Thorn Queen if it was true. But the Thorn Queen did not give any answer, she only confirmed that it was true. Meanwhile, the pink fairy said that she was indeed very smart, because only in the city where the fairy queens were born could they master such difficult techniques. Meanwhile, Du Ming continued to fight with IC. He took out his big sword and went against the girl who had a big pink braid. This scythe was really very strong and she pushed the guy away with it. The boy was really strong, and the girl wielded it very easily. She twisted it right between her fingers. She seemed like a real master, even though this scythe was twice her size. Yao said that she had a real braid and it looked really strange. The girl asked him why he looked so surprised, as if he hadn't seen anything. He just remembered that Ella had a regular weapon and she had a real scythe, and that they were different things. She said that this was not how things worked now, and he would know the difference between her and her sister. The girl began to attack even more. She told the boy to stay away, but the boy decided not to give up. He put himself on alert and was ready to attack. But suddenly someone shouted for them to stop. At that moment, both of them stopped. They were really shocked. But despite this, the Isaac continued to attack, and suddenly she didn't see one stone, and because of this she fell to the ground. The scythe also fell on her, her nose started to bleed, and she started to cry. It was really quite painful. It was Assie's sister, Ella. She said that ACI was getting too much attention and it was really very bad for everyone. ACI raised her head and looked at her sister, and her sister looked very slim and beautiful. The boy was happy because this sword really fit him and it was his good weapon. Meanwhile, Ella came closer, and this surprised AC very much, because she did not expect it to be her sister. When Ella saw her little sister, she was really very happy, because it was her little sister. At that moment, Ella hugged her baby sister very tightly. She was really very happy to see her. They hadn't seen each other for a very long time, and she was very happy to see them both. The boy was also very happy because he saw the two sisters hugging. Meanwhile, the blue fairy said that she also missed the pink fairy very much and wanted to hug her. But the pink fairy was against it. Theboe realized that these two fairies were sisters too, and it was really cool. The first pink fairy pointed to the fairy queen and said that they would both look after her. She said that she needed to say congratulations because she had just recently been reunited with her master. Meanwhile, Asia said that the boy was still very young and could not fight properly. She asked her sister how he learned to fight. She told him that Du Ming just had a talent, and that he was good at everything because of it. The boy didn't understand why Ella didn't tell her sister the truth and why it was really true. She said that she could see that everything was fine between the two of them and she didn't need to worry about it anymore. The boy was very pleased that she praised him and that they could really fight well. He was proud of himself, and now he had to go to school the next day. They went to school. It was a really sunny day. The only thing his classmates were talking about was the different explosions they heard in the different warehouses. It was really a very interesting topic. But despite this, Du Ming didn't say anything at all. He acted as if he didn't know anything. They had different theories, but whether it was true or not. Meanwhile, Ella was sitting behind him and she was thinking that the guy was not used to this. Meanwhile, one girl was running past Ella's apron. She asked the boys to stop, because the classroom was no place to run. Some of Ella's things fell to the ground, and she bent down to get them. She met someone's hand. It was really mysterious. She did not understand what it was. It was a boy, and he picked up Ella's things and said that he was always very happy to help her. It was another classmate. He was really quite nice. He said he would leave if it was okay and he just decided to leave. He was running late, but 10 minutes later some foot entered the classroom. It was very strange, because it was a teacher, and she was not an ordinary one. She was very tired and out of breath. She apologized for being late. The young man recognized the teacher as the woman he had helped. It was the same woman whose purse had been stolen. The boy wondered what this woman was doing here. It seemed to him that it was some kind of trap or deception. The woman said she was your new teacher. Her name is Oman. She said that the main teacher was not at school at the moment, so she would be replacing her. Meanwhile, the other boys fell in love with each other because she was really very good and beautiful. Ella suspected that something was wrong, and it seemed impossible. It was just too much of a coincidence. Meanwhile, all the boys were talking about how beautiful this new teacher was. They really liked her figure. She said that she saw a lot of familiar faces in this class, but that she would start the lesson anyway. After the lesson was over, all the students left the classroom. They said that they did not expect to be disrespected by their teacher. Ella asked Ming if he knew the teacher. He said that he just met her yesterday and he didn't think she could be a teacher at all. But she didn't look like a teacher anymore. Meanwhile, someone called out his name. As it turned out, it was the same woman. She turned to the boy. She said she was very happy to meet the boy in this school, in this class. She said that she did not have time to thank the boy for what he did yesterday. She asked him if she could buy him lunch or help him in some other way, but he refused. He said that everything was fine and he didn't need to do that. She said that she insisted on it and then Ming agreed to her proposal. She asked who this beauty was, pointing to Ella. Ella said she was his cousin. She asked if her cousin would like to join them for lunch, because they were family. At the same time, she turned to another boy and asked the name of another boy with black hair. And it was Gao. He said that he had said his name several times. They called this guy too, because it was one of Ming's friends. They were sitting in some restaurant and enjoying a meal. It was really very tasty. One of Ming's friends really ate a lot and he was very full. The guy asked Ming what he was going to do on the weekend. He said he would play different games. The guy asked if he would play a romantic game with his partner. Ming was really shy. He said no, don't say that. Ella suspected something and it seemed that something was really strange while she was away from the city. Suddenly, the teacher suggested that we go camping by the sea. She knew a good place with a nice view. The young man was interested. He said that it was a really good idea and we should do it. He scared what Ming thought about it. Suddenly Ella stood up. She apologized for that and said that unfortunately she had to go and thanked her for the food and for the invitation. This surprised the teacher, because she didn't expect Ella to just stand up and refuse her invitation. The two boys also did not understand what was happening with Ella. It was really strange. She went outside and started talking to someone. She asked someone to help them and check if this teacher was okay. But suddenly someone shouted Ella's name. It was Lukuan. He was standing not far from her in his costume. Ella asked if she could help him in any way, but as it turned out, the guy just wanted to toast her out. He asked if she wanted to go for coffee with him, but unfortunately, Ella said she didn't drink coffee and unfortunately she had to go, but she thanked him for the invitation. This made Theboe very angry, and he was really uncomfortable, because he had just been rejected by a very beautiful girl with whom he was apparently in love. And the next day the two sisters were running. They were running on the beach, running away from their sister. They were running very fast and playing, as it turned out, and there were other boys and their teacher with them. They were just spending time on the beach, but suddenly someone called the boy. The boy looked around. He was surprised, because he was a young teacher. She asked the boy if he could apply sunscreen to her, but her friend thought it was not a good idea. He knew that something bad was going to happen. But the woman insisted. She said that she could not reach one place and held out the sunscreen to him. The guy agreed, but he was not very willing to do it. The woman turned around and was ready for the guy to put it on her. It was a really strange scene. The guy opened the cream and it just exploded in his hands. It was really unexpected, no one expected it. The cream dripped on this teacher's face. The boy apologized to her because he was really uncomfortable. To this situation, he said that he just wanted to help her apply the cream and nothing else. She said it was okay. The beautiful woman asked him to just apply the cream, but this cream was really very slippery and it was causing a lot of problems for everyone. Suddenly, someone called the guy. The boy looked around and did not understand what was happening. He saw that an AC was flying towards him and it was flying very fast. It landed in the sand, and this caused a lot of explosions. Everything around was in the sand, and the AC and the boy were in the sand. Ella's sister was angry. She said that her little sister the boy was also angry because she had ruined the situation and the whole atmosphere for him. He said some terrible things to her. This made the little girl hurt, because they were really terrible words. She ran to her older sister and told her that it was too much. She continued to complain to her older sister about what the boy had done. The guy was really angry, because Heck knew that Ella's sister was telling a lie and was just telling false information. Meanwhile, the boy accidentally stepped on the sunscreen. He slipped and fell. He fell right on Ella's chest.